Welcome to Living with Purpose. Today we have Christy Johnson, who is this awesome individual that has been doing consulting work, empowering women, teaching leadership and strategy courses at the University of Washington Business School, and all in all, somebody that likes to have fun. And I am just thrilled to have her on the podcast. Please welcome Christy Johnson.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I'm a huge fan of your work and all you do around purpose as well.
So let's start off by you just sharing for our audience your journey, your growing up, and how did you stumble into doing what you're doing?
My journey is interesting, and sometimes people comment on how random it is. I think this common thread and theme is I really love people, and I like solving hard problems that impact people regardless of gender, race, socioeconomic status. So I grew up in a very small town in Northwest Washington, about 10 minutes from the Canadian border. My father was an entrepreneur. My mother was a teacher, which is interesting now looking at what it is that I do. And I was really fortunate that even though I was in a small town that didn't have any AP courses or much challenge, I had a family that loved learning and was really supportive of that and also loved adventure. And so that kind of theme has followed through my career. I was fortunate enough to take an economics class in high school, and I was like, oh, this is math with people. And so I ended up pursuing economics as an undergrad. And, initially thought maybe I'd do a PhD, but I ended up deciding I wanted to kind of pay it forward. So I'd had amazing teachers, both in K-12 and then also at the university level. And there were some topics like economics, personal finance, leadership that not all students were introduced to. But I believe that, talents, leadership capabilities are kind of agnostic to geography, and that public education is a great way to make sure more people have access to that. So my first job was teaching in public high school, which is a journey.
So, you kind of glossed over the fact that, you went and did undergrad in economics, but you went to Stanford.
I did. Yeah. I did my MBA at Stanford. I didn't go to Stanford for undergrad.
Clearly, not everybody gets to Stanford. Talk a little bit about that journey of being at Stanford and how does that help you with what you're doing?
And I think this theme of education, so again, I'm fortunate enough that some teachers in middle school took us on a trip to the Bay Area to look at STEM. And we were at Stanford one day and I was like, this place is amazing. And I was maybe 7th or 8th grade. But in the back of my mind, I've been like, I would love to go to Stanford someday. And then, I was teaching high school, was thinking about grad school, and I really wanted to focus on how to have systematic change. And I was seeing in my classroom that when the for-profit, the social, and then the government sectors worked really well together, they were able to get things done and improve a lot of people's lives. And so an MBA seemed like a way to do that. My husband said, apply to your dream school, right? You have decent test scores and you've done some interesting things. So I applied never thinking I'd get in. And then I did, and I debated what to do. I actually was accepted at the UW and paid a deposit at both schools, but I ultimately chose Stanford. And I think the thing that stuck with me and still sticks with me now is their purpose of changing lives, changing organizations, changing the world is very much in the DNA of their courses. And for me, it was probably the first environment I'd been in where it's incredibly collaborative. People are really, really smart. They're humble. They're all trying to figure out what their purpose is and what kind of impact they want to have on the world. And they're really open and honest about that journey and how messy it is with each other. And being in a space like that, it's very hard to replicate, but it was quite magical for the 2 years I was there.
So talk about your work now and what are you doing? And then how has teaching become part of that trajectory?
Over the course of my career, when I've stepped back and reflected, I realized that what both excites me and energizes me and brings me joy is when there's an intersection of people and ideas. And this piece on like problem solving and making sure that you're getting the right questions that you're solving and then being really curious and being hyper focused on having a positive impact in the world. And, strategy consulting is actually a way to do that. We're really fortunate. We get values-driven leaders. They come to us with all sorts of problems, like how do we address obesity through a hospital system when it doesn't fit in our hospital system? How do we think about increasing access to treatment for rare diseases, especially in low-income communities? So there's like really amazing project work that I get to do. Yeah. That's my day job. And I think that what's interesting with this is strategy consulting tends to be pretty elite, but you can learn how to do a problem solving and serve clients. And so that's actually where I've felt a a real calling to go back into the classroom at the university level. And I mean, we have a great school here in Seattle. And so I love that I get to be teaching entrepreneurship and leadership. And now I'm starting to teach strategy and just really trying to open students' eyes and let them explore a topic that's been important to me and make it a little bit more accessible, but also let them know that like it's a very personal journey that they're getting to go on as well. So strategy consulting day job, I get to work at the system level with amazing leaders. Teaching in the classroom, I get to work at the individual level with amazing students.
What are some of the bright spots of your teaching?
See, when you have these light bulb moments, I mean, I think there's so many surprises with teaching. So I think when I'm reading a reflection and I see somebody say something like, I never thought I was an entrepreneur, or I never thought I was a leader. I didn't imagine I could do these kinds of things. And you open my mind to that. So those really make me quite excited, especially when, and I'm sure you've had this too, you have these students that are incredibly articulate in class, their writing's brilliant, but then when you start to know them a little bit better, I don't know if don't have the right support or they're scared. I mean, there's probably all those things, right? I'm sure you had those moments too. But when you can help them realize, hey, I'm here to support you, right? And I see something in you that you might not be able to calibrate because it's so natural to you that you might not realize what a gift you have. So those are some of my favorite moments.
Nice. So let's talk about, why you believe purpose is important to you, and how do you show up with purpose, and how purpose helps you through tough times.
I think this is very intertwined for me. Purpose and like having a positive impact. I remember being a little kid and being like, I don't want to waste my life, right? And that's been in some ways a blessing and a curse to kind of think that way. And so how it showed up, it was a bit of a struggle. And then I'll share the moment where I started to really realize what my purpose was I would work a lot, right? Because I'd be like, oh, I'm in places that are really mission driven. I'm working in healthcare. I'm working in public education. Like my purpose is to work really hard. And then, work in and of itself is more than a job, less than a life, right? As a mentor said to me once. But the moment that became really real for me, and this big challenge was, I have a daughter and then I have twin boys, and my twins were 7 weeks early. They were in the NICU for a month, and we had 2 years of pretty intense treatment just to make sure they're going to be on as track as they could be. And I was sitting in the NICU and I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like kind of every day is extra. I really want these boys to be okay. And my purpose really came around creating sustainable work environments and then helping other people create those so we can have work and family. Because at the end of the day, like what brings us joy, it's relationships that we have. It's people that we're in community with. And that might be our family, that might be our neighborhoods, that might be our educational systems, that might be our workplaces. But that doesn't always happen. And so that's really what became my purpose, was to try to create those.
And how does that work for you when times are tough? How do you do it?
I was in a big meeting, and there was actually, I don't know if you saw on the news, there were these swatting incidents at high schools. And my daughter's high school was one of them. She's a freshman, where police swarmed the school, guns pulled. I have all these text messages hitting my phone from other parents. I'm trying to see if my husband has found her. Unfortunately, it was a hoax, and the police department acted really quickly. But it's these moments where my biggest fear, right? Like I love my children, that something might happen to them, was there. And I was also torn, as I have been my whole career, of family is important to me and also work is important to me. And how do I try to minimize that work-life conflict? So, I was prepping for this last night after going through this, and I was like, yeah, I think that purpose really does come to bear, because I get to create jobs, right? I find a lot of fulfillment with that in my work as an employer running a small business. I get to work with leaders to help them think through work-life sustainability and what are they doing in their workplaces. And then I get to work with students who are going to be the future leaders of all sorts of things, and be a role model of like, you can actually have work and life and figure out how to integrate that in a way that matters to you. And also talk about the times that it's hard. So that's how a lot of it ends up showing up. I have this roadmap that has my purpose statement on it, actually based on some of your book. I save on my desktop, and I have a printed out copy, and I'll look at that, on Fridays when I'm kind of reflecting on how the week's been. And I find that's really important, especially when the times are tough.
We all go through these moments where things just don't work out the way we expect it to work out. And the incident with your daughter's school, which I think is just crazy, insane, and scary. And I just don't understand what gets people to do those things. But I think the piece that you kind of talked about, which I, wanted to kind of highlight so that I don't want our listeners to miss it, is this emphasis on the word joy. You didn't talk about happiness. You actually talked about joy. And I find that to be a very important distinction because purpose actually gives you joy. And joy is experienced only in a collective setting. It's not in an individual setting. Happiness is an individual pursuit. You can be happy. Your spouse or a significant other can be in the other room unhappy. Mm-hmm. But joy is something that you share. And I think purpose has that ability to ignite joyful moments, which is a collective experience. So I really want people to focus on the fact that we as humans are not individuals that lives in solitary environments. We live in a collective environment, and joy is just one of those things that binds us together. So I don't know, Christy, if you want to just reflect a little bit more on that.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true, right? Because I see a lot of people pursuing happiness, or I think we become even more individual. But if you look through 3,000 years of history in almost all religions, right, this community, this being in service of others, and the joy and the purpose that can bring you without the expectation to do anything. Even with students, right? Like walking beside people who are trying to figure out their purpose and where they want to lead and what their gifts are, and doing that in a community, which is that magical experience I had when I was in graduate school at Stanford. You can do so much more. And even during the tough times, you're able then to connect with someone and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. And they're able to bear witness to it and say, I see you, right? And we miss that so often. I was just catching up with another student, and we're just talking about how rare it is to actually really see anybody these days. Everybody's so busy, right? And to remember those things that matter to someone, or maybe to see some growth, or to cry with them when things are tough. That's really what being human ends up being about.
Hey, again, there's this very another interesting word that you've used that I really want to make sure that people don't forget in the sentence is see the other person. And I think for educators, it is so important that we actually see our students as individuals. I tell you, in a classroom of 50 people, I cannot for the life of me remember anybody's names. But I have to make an effort of, even if I don't remember their name, I actually see them. And that seeing these becomes a way of acknowledging people where they are, in the way they are, and the way they want to be seen, and not in the way you want to see them.
Yes.
So seeing is actually another very important piece as to how do we think about using purpose and living with purpose as a way by which we see others and we show up with joy. I've just finished my classes, and these, obviously, kids are all grateful, and they kind of give you cards and all sorts of things, but it is, and I kind of decided to post, I kind of decided to emulate you when you post all your stuff about your classrooms. I thought, I'll put my stuff on the classroom, and then all of these students are coming back and just reflecting their time with me. And the most important thing I found that they were talking about is that I actually saw them. Mm-hmm. It's not what you're telling them, but it is that you actually see them, and you recognize them, and you respect them, and you see their individuality. So purpose is that one way that drives it. So I'm quite sure, Christy, you're having similar experiences.
I saw your post as well, and I thought it was really lovely how everyone added in some comments. Yeah, but I mean, and then if we can pay it forward because people saw us, right? And that feels good, right? So why don't we do that for more people in the world? We'd be in a better situation.
Exactly. So let's end with you, sharing your one golden nugget, this piece of wisdom that you live by and you think our listeners, should be able to emulate or at least follow?
My purpose is really around being in service of others and being in a community of people that want to be in service of others and walking alongside people where they're trying to figure out where and how they want to serve and find their joy and find their purpose. And the more we can see and bear witness to that in other people, the better everyone's going to end up feeling and the stronger communities that we'll have.
Thank you very much for being part of this. Again, I want to remind our listeners that purpose is that renewable sense of energy that continues to drive humanity forward. It actually gives you that supplemental energy that gets you on that path of being content, of being fulfilled, of having meaning, of being joyful. So join us in this journey to live a life of purpose. Visit our website at purpose-mindset.org. Share your journey of purpose. Also, join us in our book. We are launching a book, Become a Co-author, Living with Purpose. Reach out to us. Thank you very much. Until the next episode. Thank you very much, Christy.
You're so welcome. Thank you for inviting me and for all the important work you're leading.